What signs does homosexuality convey?
What can homosexuality be the sign of? Origins of homosexuality are a recurring question. Some theories establish homosexuality have genetic origins. Some others state it is acquired. We're going to study the most obvious facts, either confirmed by studies or through recurring similarities between homosexual people from one homosexual person to another. We can identify different types of fields or backgrounds in the beginning of homosexuality in people's personal history, particularly within painful contexts. It may come from an early life trauma or from the lack of father figure, because the father wasn't there, was completely absent, or maybe because he was too violent. Another explanation can come from an identity failure. Regarding identity failure or crisis, what often really happened is that people once lived a homosexual experience that made them believe they had to identify as homosexual, whether they aren't homosexual, but they grow up with that idea in mind. Another determining factor is, as I said, an absent father. Sometimes we can identify with another masculine figure, such as a grandfather or an uncle, yet it's not always possible. But most of the time, the father was distant, absent, or distant because of his work, or even because of his own experience wounds. That is why we are afraid of masculinity and afraid of the identification to our same-gender parents. Having an overprotective mother may also be another significant influence. When you have an absorbing mother who doesn't let you free, who doesn't let us confront certain fears, then we begin to feel anxious about our own self and become that anxiety. Regarding that kind of mother, we can identify the mother leading at the head of the house, evicting the father and even dominating him. That is how we can risk to play our mum and break all bonds with men. These are the most tangible facts explaining homosexual inclination. As we all know, childhood and adolescence are the two crucial steps in the building of our personality. Recently, I read a book upon adolescence, in which it was reminded that the word adolescence comes from the Latin word dolore, meaning pain. This phase is indeed painful, and we struggle in the transition from childhood to adolescence. Today, this difficulty is increased by the pressure of television and other artists' slogans on many teenagers formatting their way of thinking and of living. Because of that, they may experience a disturbing self-questioning phase when they are precisely looking for mentors to look up to on their way to adulthood. Therefore, if during that particular phase homosexuality is promoted, there's a lot of chance that even teenagers who aren't genuinely homosexual play that part anyway, ending up thinking they really are homosexual. That is why parents should take better care of their children and be by their side. Let's talk about sexual abuse. It is often a taboo subject that families never talk about. However, sexual abuse is a reality strongly disrupting someone's profound identity. Let's take a child who cannot talk because he's threatened and who ends up thinking the abuse he suffered is his fault. Then he starts to have a blockage and doesn't want to hear anything about sexuality. For that reason, he withdraws into himself and prefers not having any contact with anyone. Some perverted minds claim that a child already possesses a strong libido and can even feel a homosexual desire, that a teenager is ready to have sexual intercourse. It's not the strong sexual desire, but the feeling of being considered, of belonging, of getting attention, things that are missing in the personal development of a homosexual individual. Once I heard a homosexual person say this sentence I loved: "Parents, if you don't want another adult kissing your children, kiss them yourselves." Another constant characteristic among gay people, many times I noticed that in the homosexual desire, we reify ourselves a lot, and we also treat others like objects. I think, and I've had many occasions to notice that in all of us, that this is mainly due to the fact that we tend not to face our own reality and that we prefer falling into destructive attitudes that make us, at the same time, believe that we are superior to others and above them. There actually is a weakness in the personality of a gay person because, on the one hand, they distance themselves from the differences between sexes and, on the other hand, they lacked attention from the same gendered parents. And that is why we then try to compensate those lacks through others. And how do they do that? By overinvesting the sexual field and by trying to look superior. And more precisely in this sexual conquest, we pretend to overcome and heal all the wounds we've suffered through pressure. Among the things that affect us the most in this relentless struggle for sexual pleasure is the need to always have the upper hand on others. I've noticed that we often have in mind the need to be the best, to be superior. We're constantly looking for their approval. We want them to say, "That's very good," or "You're perfect," to accept us as we are, and as well as seeing us succeed in everything we try. Why? Probably because since we've been children, we lacked consideration, or this reassuring tenderness that we expected from our parents. I conclude with asking every parent to always look at their children with love, because your loving glance is the most important thing in the world to a child. And when you feel love in your parents' eyes, that changes everything, because you don't have to look for it anywhere else. You'll be having it forever.
When you hear about gender dysphoria or bipolarity, does that bother you?
It depends on how we talk about it. Personally, I define myself as a bipolar person, but not in a bad way. More as a type of a personal quality. But if people coming from outside the gay community talk about it, yes, it will bother me because they are gonna confuse gender dysphoria and psychiatric issues. And that upsets me because I don't see the connection.
Is there a link between homosexuality and psychiatry?
Today I'm going to present the link between homosexuality and therapies. Recently, famous people came out strongly on the subject. Among them was Pope Francis. In 2018, flying back from Ireland, he suggested to parents to take their gay child to go and see a psychiatrist if needed. His words came as a media shock, since he did dare to make a link between homosexuality and psychiatry. As late as 2019, Rafi Peretz, Israel Minister of Education at the time, advised people feeling an attraction to the same sex to go to therapy, all generations combined. Naturally, his remarks caused an outcry. The APA, American Psychiatrists Association, and the WHO, World Health Organization, decided for several years now that homosexuality and transidentity are no longer mental issues. It was declared with a referendum. They all gathered to sort and vote upon what was to be considered as mental illness and what was not. That's how homosexuality and transidentity weren't considered as a disease or as a mental disorder anymore. That's why they got taken off the list of illnesses. It is weird because deciding if something is good or bad for a person, or if the person is suffering from a situation, shouldn't be decided by referendum. It is very likely that this decision was subjected to political pressures. Because we, gay people, as well as trans people, actually suffer. We suffer, even if our family accepts us, even if we accept ourselves, even if the entire world accepts us. It's clear that the issue of homosexuality is getting more and more political. And we're told that homosexuality and transidentity are not diseases. Always with the best intentions, not to hurt us so we don't feel discriminated. In 2016, a corner was turned on the small island of Malta. Psychologists working on those therapies can be fined 10,000 euros and jailed 1 year. There are therapies for anxiety and depression, as well as there are therapies on homosexuality and trans identity issues that can be relevant. It's unfortunate to see the prohibition of sexual restoration therapies in more and more countries, because we, gay people, have the right to decide for ourselves what type of medical help we want to get. Sexuality restoration therapies shouldn't be prohibited, because doing so, it prevents some people who do not want to remain homosexual and people who don't want to feel any homosexual attraction to get any form of help. And that's very serious, because there are many people who are depressed by homosexuality. By prohibiting any form of treatment, all possibilities to feel better are eliminated. Prohibiting those therapies goes against a person's health. Generally speaking, we're told that gay people's suffering only comes from outside their own being, that it comes from parents, friends, country, the entire world not accepting them. Well, it's not true at all, because people who publicly out it, even if they are accepted by their family or live in a country with laws in favor of gay rights, do not feel completely satisfied. The pain of gay people is not coming from the outside. It is coming from the inside, because homosexuality is a fear of the difference between sexes. But it is also a form of depression. A gay person suffers from inside causes, probably because she hasn't completely dealt with her own sensitivity or sexuality. There are many similarities among gay people that I wouldn't call causes, but very similar grounds that probably happened during childhood or adolescence. For instance, most of gay people, if not all, have had issues with the complete development of their affectivity. Probably a bad relationship with their father, or living with very strict and unaffectionate parents. Many were also sexually abused, even if it is not the case for all of us, evidently. Some also have been harassed, others not. Many gay people have had a very oppressive mother, not all of them. That's why I'm not talking about rules per se, because talking about causes will imply that there are immediate consequences. And it's true that we all have a different degree of sensitivity. Sexual abuse may destroy me and lead me to homosexuality, but not necessarily somebody else. We're not equal on that matter. Homosexuality is a form of depression. We can't keep lying about it. When someone has an active homosexual life, that person usually counterbalances sadness with emotional and sexual pleasures that actually get her worse. Publicly, she will claim, "I'm gay and I'm very happy with that." But in private, you end up finding out that she doesn't blossom as much as she pretends she does. Homosexuality is also a form of depression because it's a fear of the difference between sexes. Since a gay person is internally paralyzed by this fear, she can't be as free as she could be, can't be at peace with herself. We gay people always have the feeling that we are missing something, and that's why sometimes we are searching that thing in a couple. But even if we find some emotional compensation in the arms of some of our partners, we always remain unsatisfied. It's truly important that someone wishing to get rid of homosexual tendencies should be able to find competent specialists on that matter, because every therapist can't pretend to be a specialist. There are very famous psychologists pretending that it's possible to go from homosexuality back to a heterosexual life. One of them is Richard Cohen. He was attracted by men, and after a long process of therapy searching, He claimed he succeeded not to feel any gay attraction whatsoever, and getting totally rid of any homosexual inclination. Dr. Nicolosi is another famous therapist claiming to be able to redirect many patients' homosexual tendencies. And there are therapies that we totally disagree with, because they make people suffer and are just frauds. Let people make their own choices. Let's not set up unfair laws that don't contribute to improve people's psychological and psycho-emotional health. We need those therapies to exist and to be permitted. Homosexuality might be the result of a complicated mix of fears, insecurities, mental blocks, lacks and other dissatisfactions. So I advise those who so wish to try and solve these fears, insecurities, blockages, lacks and dissatisfactions to solve them either on their own or with the help of a therapist as much as possible. The more knots we untie, the freer we'll be. And homosexuality, being the consequence of these knots, can lower to some degree its strength. The so-called conversion therapies do not guarantee that a person will stop experiencing sexual attraction to the same sex. They are just a help that makes us identify the wounds of our personal history and work on them. This work may allow the diminishment of our homosexuality intensity, though it is still there. The fading out of our homosexuality, waking up from time to time, the total loss of our homosexuality strength until its complete disappearance, and finally it may happen that it neither disappears nor fades out nor loses its intensity. In that case, we'll have to learn to live in peace with it. Let this issue of therapies not lose sleep. Let those who want to try them simply have the freedom to do so.
What is the gender theory? Bisexuality, intersexuality, transidentity, transsexuality.
The gender theory is defining a new identity that didn't exist before, that actually never really existed at all. Kind of a gender revolution. It means that we don't talk about men and women. I am transgender, I feel like a woman. I would tend to identify myself as a woman while I am a boy. That gender theory is actually saying that you're neither a man nor a woman. You're something else, another species, another race in some way, which can have a bit of a sectarian form. Which means that you're nothing in the end. That often make me think of a unicorn being something that doesn't exist. You identify yourself as something in between, something quite neutral, cold. And I think that is a mistake, because if you're transgender, you identify yourself as a man or as a woman anyway. I'm trans. I feel like a woman. I don't feel like being anything else. And yet, I'm a man. Where might that come from? I would tend to think that the gender theory is an idea that was invented to gather people that don't feel at ease with their own gender. Because they don't feel the same way they were born. It could be linked, and I speak for myself here, to a sexual injury or to a lack of something in our life. It's an anomaly actually. It's not something normal. The gender theory is not something new that we've discovered. It is something that we made up, that has nothing to do with reality. Here is the simple truth. You are male or female, but feel the opposite way. Meanwhile, you're a boy. Or you are a girl. I would say that in our society we tend to redefine all kinds of categories. We try to innovate. We think we have a lot of things to discover. Whereas since the beginning of humanity, since Adam and Eve, there is the man and the woman. No matter how you may feel, you're either a boy or a girl. You can't deny it. You don't get to choose what you have between your legs. In the 21st or even the 20th century, you hear, if there are girls or boys that feel like being something else, it means that there is something else. Another race, another type of personality, another type of human beings or sexes. But it's completely wrong. It's stupid to say so. It doesn't make any sense or in some specific situation, but I'll talk about it later. Let's talk about bisexuality now. I'm bisexual. By definition, bisexuality is the ability to love males or females, without any preferences. Personally, when I was younger, I always thought of myself as heterosexual. Even if I feel trans, I am still aware of it. You can't lie to yourself. If you are trans, etc., and you feel like a girl when you're a boy, you can't ignore what you have between your legs. And you can't ignore what you feel either. But bisexuality is simple. I love girls. I love boys. I can live with a girl maybe a little bit more easily than with a boy, but sexually speaking, I would get along better with a boy. It doesn't prevent from loving both. I love both, but in a different way. Here it is. What can bisexuality be a sign of? It is rather difficult to answer that question, especially for me, who never asked myself these kind of questions. Can be a sign, for instance, of my absent father. I've always felt closer to girls because I've always only known my mother. I've never known my father, almost not at all, and there is a lack in some way. And this lack has probably had an influence on me. Instead of the lack of affection from your father through your teenage years, it's gonna be a sexual lack. And this sexual lack will turn you towards men. What is missing in your life? A father. Personally, my family also had pedophilia issues in which I was involved. Consciously or not, I think they influenced me. If I have been abused in my youth, it influences me today eventually, even if I don't realize it. But in today's society, bisexuality is something common. It's not a big deal. But I'll be more fruitful with a girl than I would be with a boy, even if I love boys. Next subject, intersexuality. So, how do I see intersexuality? I see it a bit like, I don't want to generalize, but like hermaphroditic people, like a morphological anomaly, a medical one. You don't choose trans identity or homosexuality. All the more for people who were born with both parts, a penis and a vagina at the same time. Either the parents choose their child's sex at birth, which is quite risky, or the child gets to decide when the time comes. What is it a sign of? What is there to say except that it's a genetic condition? It is not something very serious, it happens, and there is a solution. If when you're 18 or even before, when you're a teenager, you feel more male or female, when you have a little bit of both attributes, well, you're free to choose. I think no one will blame you. There are also hormonal conditions. Generally, a boy will be born with a testosterone level considered as masculine. The same goes for girls, with estrogen and progesterone level. But some people are born with a condition where they'll have less testosterone and more estrogen, or vice versa. In this case, a hormonal treatment will be possible depending on how you feel. I think you have to follow your heart first. That's what is most important. Let's say that for intersexual people, the choice really is a personal decision. There isn't always an ethical or a moral question, in a sense that you don't have a choice. You were born both, and it's not always easy. Nor two types of hormones. All men have a certain level of feminine hormones. All women have a certain level of masculine hormones, but very low. And to me, the choice really belongs to the intersexual person. What is transidentity? It's being born with defined genitals, but little by little, well, you realize that you feel a bit, not even a bit, but completely different. You're not in line with what you have between your legs and with your physical appearance. It may not be the case when you're 8, because at this age you haven't hit puberty yet. But after that, the question becomes paramount, and from there, things get tough. For instance, when you start, like I did, having hair, building muscles, or having a deeper voice, then it is problematic. More than problematic, it is nightmare, because you can't look at yourself in the mirror anymore. It's torture. For transgender people watching, I think you know what I mean. It is simple. Being transgender means not being in line with what you were born with, which means in a Christian point of view, and in my own point of view, with what God gave you. And it is necessarily good, necessarily just. Where might that come from? I don't think you are born transgender. I really don't think so. I really think that most of the time it is caused by events that happened during your childhood. It is often unconscious. That is why it is an enormous endeavor to know where transidentity comes from, because it requires us to go back to our early years that we don't always necessarily recall. But if you listen to your parents, if you pay close attention, you can notice details, tiny as they can be, that could be related to it. We are not responsible. It's not our fault. And deep down, when you're 18 and you realize that some things might have happened to you when you were a kid, you can't do anything about it. It happened, and that's how you feel now. Knowing where it comes from can help you evolve and make the right choices. And the right choice is not necessarily towards transition, because transitioning often requires more efforts and sacrifices than slowly learning how to accept what we are. In fact, it's easier. If you try, it's way easier. You have to take advantages from what you are and what you would like to be. And if you do it properly, it is in no way an obstacle to being happy. I am happier now that I've stopped transitioning than if I had gone through with it completely, because the social pressure becomes psychologically overcoming. So overcoming that you can't think of anything else, and you end up defining yourself as another gender, as a separate person, so it's a mistake. The truth is that I am a boy who feels like a girl. It is very simple, but I am a boy and it doesn't matter if I feel like a girl. And even if you feel uncomfortable with your body, keep in mind that there is a difference between how you see yourself and how other people see you. And other people see you as a relatively normal person if you don't play your part, if you are yourself. Even if you're effeminate, if you keep being you, people will notice. But if you spend your time worrying about your physical appearance, your face, your body, you don't really live. And that's torture. Today I pay less attention to that. I'm comfortable being me. And it almost amuses me. I couldn't have imagined that 5 or 10 years ago. What is transsexuality? To me, it means being transgender but choosing to transition. I don't consider hormonal transition like this. I took a hormonal transition. I've never considered myself as a transsexual person, simply because the term sexual bothers me and is, to me, strictly related to the sex change. In the end, you never really change sex. I can change what I have between my legs into something more feminine. But I'll never be able to bear children. It's impossible. It is how it is. And it's not that bad. To me, being transsexual is making the choice, which is not always the best one, but I respect it, to have your testicles removed. It's a matter of appearance. You think you get a vagina, when it's actually just a physical change. It looks like a vagina, but it has nothing to do with one. It's very different. It's just an aesthetic matter, not a real one. It's just visual. How you see yourself in the mirror, or how your partner sees you. But in fact, it's not a real vagina. Or if you are a female to male and you choose to have a surgical procedure, you damn well know, and you can't deny it, that it is not a real penis. You know it. It's just your appearance and it's not real. And in the end, it's simpler, less expensive and less worrying not to spend your money in it. I can assure you. Go outside, think of something else than your trans identity, and you'll see that there are a million other better things, nicer things, and especially less expensive things to think about. I spent a fortune in it. I must have spent 20,000 euros, maybe 25,000 euros. It's a bit dumb to say, but it was simpler before. I think I could have spent my money in a more practical way. Because in the end, I haven't changed sex. I still have the same as before. And it also brings me pleasure. I don't need to change sex to have pleasure and to feel good about myself. You know it. You, if for example you're transgender and you transition, nobody cares about what you have between your legs. You don't walk around naked in the street. What people see is your face, how you behave, if you behave naturally or not, if you feel good in your body or not. And if you're transition, you probably know you're not comfortable in your body anymore. You may even be more uncomfortable because you expect others to see you in a certain way. For instance, if you are male to female and you transition, you'll notice, and you know it, that by transitioning, even if you have more feminine characteristics and that you want to be seen as a woman, your concern about looking like a girl is huge, colossal even. That's the only thing you think about all day long, your look, how you wear makeup, how you dress, how your nose or your cheekbones look. Whereas, if you stop thinking about it, don't think that people outside think about it. They don't care about it. They don't think, well, he's got that particular characteristics, or she looks that particular way. The person you see in the street doesn't care. That person will care if you start taking on a role, if you pretend, if you look preoccupied, that people notice. But if you act natural and think of something else when the way you look, well, you are more free and you enjoy life so much more.
If you are homosexual for your whole life, what are you going to do with it? If God lets you feel homosexual, then why?
I don't know if it fits the church dictates, but I think God uses my homosexuality to make me find Him. I think He uses it. Maybe more when I renounce it, actually. But in any case, my homosexuality is a path to holiness. I sometimes understand things in faith, thanks to my attraction to girls. I think it can't be selfish. It allows me to give parts of myself, maybe through this TV report. I think that through my homosexuality, even if I'm a bit shy or apprehensive, God sometimes allows me to overcome myself thanks to homosexuality. It is a bit paradoxical.
If I'm attracted to men my whole life, I'm not worried. I know where to go and what to do. I think purity is something really important for human beings. For my life to be entirely dedicated to serving others. Without serving, life doesn't really make sense. If God lets me feel an attraction for men until I die, I think it is to help others, to help them focus on real happiness, which is holiness.
It didn't make me gay. I'm almost certain of. Because God is just. And homosexuality is a fear of the difference of sexes. And if I ask all my gay friends and look at my own life, we've all been scared of not being a real man or a real woman. We've been scared of being isolated, or not having friends, or being in a couple with someone. We've been scared of our own body, of our parents, and of being parents on our turn, scared of not pleasing. Then we will hide these fears with pride and originality. But deep down, homosexuality is a fear, a shame of being yourself. But even though God didn't plant this fear in me, He still allows it to remain on the long term. And I even think this is because I can help people who have fears to live with those fears, to live with their complexes, and to be friends with everybody who suffers. I think that God allowed me to still feel gay because it removes everybody's complexes. Really! And homosexuality is the key to people's hearts. When I tell people I'm gay, they open their heart to me, tell me their deepest sufferings. And then I'm thinking, well, Jesus, through the homosexuality He allowed in me, allows me to get in touch with everybody, to alleviate the suffering of a lot of people, and to be everybody's best friend. So I tell myself, this is not so bad. He gave me a key. Homosexuality is my suffering, my complex, my existential shame, but well, it's the people's heart's little key. However, I'm not saying, great, I'm gay! No, it so happens I feel gay, and the Lord uses it to open people's hearts, and for me to be everybody's friend.
If you are transgender for your life, what do you do with it?
Several things. First, in a way, enjoy it. Because it also has its good sides. I can play with it, and that's a lot of fun. But I also think it is above all my cross, something I have to bear, and that, if it is God's will, and He must be right, I'm not gonna go against it and I'll accept it with joy.
What would you say to a teenager who discovers his own homosexuality?
I would like to tell you that I've been through this before. So I think I understand the struggle you're in. Because it's a struggle. When you grow up being gay, you're not understood. And in general, you're isolated. Having suffered from this at school, I know what you're going through. I'll give you 2 tips. First, don't act on your homosexuality, because it's not an identity and it's not love. Contrary to what you're told on TV and in movies, to hide you the truth. But it's not just a prohibition I want to tell you, because that would be a bit blunt and drive you to suicide, and it's the opposite that I want. On the contrary, if you feel gay when you're a teenager, wait and see if it's something that will last. Often you're building your personality when you're a teenager. So you can't stop at a feeling you got during that long process. And I'm telling you, if it's gonna last, it's for good reason. Because someone gay actually sheds light in the world on the deep meaning of sexuality. And can understand the suffering of many, many people and relieve them. So if you feel that your homosexuality is something serious, don't tell yourself, my life is over, I'll never be able to love. But rather, how son? I'll be the friend who will understand many people's sufferings. And my life has a great sense. In addition, that homosexuality at least is allowed. And if God allows it, it's for great things to happen. It's not for nothing. So it's not time for you to kill yourself. I think this fragility can be your strength all your life.
What would you say to an adult who always felt homosexual and who's watching this movie actually?
I would like to tell you that for us gay people, the only possibility to be happy we are presented is partnership. I would like to tell you that I chose the consecrated celibacy, and it's not easy every day, but it is a path that makes me happy. What I earn from taking this path is what makes me happy. It's linked a lot to my faith with Jesus. I don't know what would make sense without it. And I'd like to tell people in a relationship that if there are feelings of unhappiness, you might not think about it, but it can also come from the fact that you are in a gay relationship. Because when I was in a gay relationship, I didn't think that my unhappiness could also come from that. There is unhappiness in male-female relationships as well. But I think there is something specific in gay relationships. But I'd also like to say at the same time that I don't think it is love. I find that there is something beautiful in two gay people trying to love each other. So there's also a form of admiration.
I don't know if you act on your homosexuality, but only you can answer the question, am I happy with my gay lifestyle? I suggest you have a look at what we'll present in this documentary, in order to realize that there is another way to live your homosexuality, another way to be happy with it.
I want to say, welcome to the club! Now I'm an adult. I've always felt gay, and I don't think it will pass away. So I feel very close to you. I'm thankful to you also, because through your experiences and our similarities, you nourish my life. You give it a meaning. So I'm very happy to have you as a brother. Furthermore, every ordeal you went through, every love story you lived, some of were unsatisfying and bad, they all helped me. I would like to thank you for this help. Because you went through these gay experiences, I think you really can understand this movie. You really can stop losing yourself in love stories that go nowhere and that are satisfying but not fulfilling. So I think you can understand. You've got everything you need to understand and the experience to accept, without fighting it, what we have to say. When you are young, you still foster illusions about homosexual experience. And I think that you have the experience to decipher and welcome in peace, with your heart and intelligence, what we have to tell you, what the Church has to tell you. You're mature enough for that. Also, until you're 99 years old, it's still the moment to take the right decisions and to quit fooling around, I think. If you feel that a gay lifestyle, even out of gay community, is not fulfilling for you, it's still time to say no. And rather, well, I feel gay, that's how I feel. That doesn't mean I have to be in couple. And that's not a reason not to believe in love. On the contrary, it's because you believe in love that you can't have relationships of lesser quality.